Hello everybody, and welcome into my little lore cave from my game, Midnight Dawn of Darkness. In this episode, we're starting big and talking about the dragon gods of Emdod, who they are, their capabilities, historical importance for each of the dragons, their general personalities, and their descriptions, so that those wishing to know more about them for their own games and stories, or for those who wish to have more understanding of the lore of Emdod's world, Alencia, can get proper clarification of the dragon gods. Sit back, enjoy, and grab some hot cocoa and some popcorn as we talk about the dragons of Emdod. Like and subscribe and join the Discord for more! Firstly, let's set some ground rules about the dragons. In Emdod, there are only 7 named dragons, which are collectively known as the Dragon Gods, with the much smaller, more variable dragons being known as the Wyvera. This video will focus on the major 7, while discussing some of the Wyvera under them. Additionally, I will cover the groups of religious knights under each of the dragon gods, also known as the Colored Ways. This video will also cover the lore for each of the Colored Ways' weapons and the current knights they're assigned to around 650 CE, which is when most people will be playing this game. Of course, when playing your own games in Emdod, you may want to vary from that time frame, so take this information of them as a template. And if you would like to learn more about the history of each of the Colored Ways, or about the Wyvera, comment down below. Or join the Discord in the description and suggest it to me directly. With all that in mind, let's start discussing everything you need to know about the Dragon Gods of Emdod. To start, let's talk about the lineage of our Dragon Gods and finally introduce them. On screen now is a full version of the lineage. Starting with Santos, an old god before the universal collapse, known as the Balance. His lore is unnecessary to understanding the dragon gods themselves. However, if this video interests you, and you'd like info on all 4 of the old gods, wait for the Genesis of Alencia video coming in about 3 weeks. It'll be worth your time. However, during the universal collapse, due to the lack of creation magic binding Santos together, Santos splits into Sylvari and Darvanis, the dragon gods of light and darkness respectively. Sylvari and Darvanis, being the only of their kind at the start of Alencia, mate and create the 5 dragons under them. Nulbreek, the dragon of design and creation, Conreem, the dragon of water and liquids, Sembrion, the dragon of fire and plasma, Jiri, the dragon of cloud and wind, and Gul'shanen, the dragon of growth and ground. After Sylvari and Darvanis' children are born, they have a fallout, and each of the dragons learn to use their innate judgment magic, left over from Santos, to create the Wyvera, shape the lands, and eventually create all of humankind. Not necessarily in that order, but you get the point. They live upon the Draken Isles, one for each of them, representing their innate type of judgment magic, and the elements they oversee as the gods of Alencia. Under their guidance, humanity inevitably forms the Colored Ways as a way to hold order and peace. One under each of the 4 dragons of matter, Conreem, Sembrion, Jiri, and Gul'shanen, with preparations made for ways under Sylvari, Darvanis, and Nulbreek. As humanity grows, they eventually leave the Draken Isles to go out into the world of Alencia, leaving the dragons alone with their Wyvera, and their own Garden of Eden, only hosting the likes of the Colored Ways meeting areas and gathering places, with the origins of humanity being overgrown and slowly lost to time. But enough about what humanity did and what humanity caused and humanity. Let's talk dragons. Sylvari. Sylvari awoke upon the open fields of her isle, surrounded by the last surviving plants, life, and most importantly, the last of humanity. Garthog, after the universal collapse, split and shredded the universe. She had no memories before this moment, only what she saw at the time, and only what was held deep inside her. the want to care for, and see this world blossom under her light. Sylvari is known as the Mother Dragon, the Light Dragon, the Sun, the Dragon of Day, and the Mother of Life, and is the second largest creature in all of Emdod. As the Dragon of Light, and born of the good half of Santos, she oversees and provides all judgment magic concerned with light in the universe of Emdod. Sylvari is quite literally the sun of Valencia, and her daily flight into the sky works as the day part of the day-night cycle in the world. Her scales are believed to be made of hard light, a substance that is normally synthetically created by alchemists. However, seem to be even beyond this, as the light of hard light is nowhere in comparison to the light of Sylvari's scales. Additionally, coastal regions surrounding the Draken Isles don't have a full nighttime due to where her roost is, and it looks like a permanent sunset during the night in these regions. As a funny side note, the reason why BCE, or Before Common Era, and CE, Common Era, exists on Valencia's calendar is because someone discovered that looking at Sylvari through a telescope to confirm the dragons did really exist was actually a bad idea. Sylvari is shaped like your typical European dragon, yet has a doting and slender vibe to her. She is very fulfilling with her presence, capable of quite literally lighting up the room. Her face is adorned with 7 horns, which each curl backwards, and 2 bright silver-gray eyes, which are the only parts of her that seem to not be pure light. To give a general size comparison for you all, she's a dragon that is relatively the size of a small village in Valencia, or, in real-life terms, at least as big as a football arena. And she's smaller than her ex-husband of a dragon, Darvanis, just to put them into comparison. In the early days of Valencia, before the mating of the dragons, her major goal was healing and reviving the life of Valencia, using her innate magic to heal the creatures and provide for its life. However, this wasn't working the best. Sure, the omniscient dragon of light, all-knowing and able to whip across the world she oversaw in an instant, was capable of doing so much for the world. However, in a world at the end of time, she couldn't stop time's ticking clock, and learned to understand the death that followed almost all life. So instead of healing and saving life, she taught the humans on the Draken Isles how to heal, and worked to create more life to fill the lands, slowly adjusting it so that all creatures, large and small, could survive and thrive throughout the world. In her attempts to create more life, she mated with Darvanis, creating the other 5 dragons, and under her care, nurtured the 5 to control their innate versions of the judgment magic, teaching them, alongside Darvanis, of the world they oversaw. Shortly after the mating of the dragons, she delved deeper, and created the Wyvera of Light with her own working of creation magic and judgment magic. Shortly after, alongside the clergy of men which had flourished under her watch, she saw the creation of Sylvari's Spine, a legendary staff made in honor of her, with powers said to embody her innate magical healing, and can easily resurrect or heal any wound rapidly. The staff was given to Garthog Thog prior to the Great Exodus, and he used it well during his time on the Isles as the guide to all of humanity. When the Colored Ways deemed that the Great Exodus needed to occur, and they all left the Isle, he left the staff under her care, and prepared the setup for the mythical Way of White, if it was ever needed, and said their final goodbyes to each other as all of humanity headed into the rest of the world. From then onward, she took care of her isle, flying into the skies with each passing day, caring for her children, and with the help of her daughter Gulshanen, helped cultivate new life throughout the world, creating creatures of all types mythical to common, and providing her light throughout the world. Her nature to do good for the world meant that, throughout time, she'd provide otherworldly guidance to those wishing to do the best, sowing time to save them when evil would corrupt and destroy those wishing to do good. As time progressed, she'd meet with multiple of the Colored Ways and Grand Councils, even being the one who sat in the Ground Council for chaining the moon created by Conreem's freezing of Solgar, the Grand Demon of Wrath, which would inevitably lead to the Dark Moon War in around 620 CE. in which she fought with the Colored Ways and the dragons against Alabaster, the last remaining of the old gods from before the universal collapse, and the demons which had taken control of the chain bases, eventually leading to Alabaster's death and the creation of the Astral Gate, home of the now revived creator of all. He, alongside Darvanis and Sylvari, are now discussing how to further expand the universe beyond Elincier, and just what exactly that entails for all of its denizens. Sylvari is a relatively unique character with great importance to all, and is a commonplace in many campaigns that her presence is shown through churches, and is honored through the Sylvari Sigil. Additionally, under her guidance, many have seen angelic beings, remnants of the old universe which see her goodness, and wish to help the good of the living creatures as a reason to exist here in this realm. While angels are rare in Elincier, their sightings are important and have shaped many different areas, much like how sightings of the Wyvera of Light shape many as well. Both are considered equally as good, but each commonly provides their own importance or jurisdiction as to why their presence is made manifest. She is by far a very powerful being, considered multi-galactic in strength compared to many other stories, but focuses most of her power and strength towards being the mother to all life and a kind god to her denizens, shaping the world to help those most in need. Darvanis. Darvanis awoke to the darkness surrounding him, the barren wastes of his isle reflecting the dark emotions he felt inside of him. With his mind feeling satisfied with the new world before him, something had happened, something wrong, and yet he was satisfied. He smiles, death emanating around him. Time had changed, and so had he. Darvanis is the father dragon, the dark dragon, the night, and the father of death, and is the largest creature in all of M.'s history. Darvanis was born of the dark half of Santos, the half made to represent the evils and wrongs of the universe. In nearly every way, he is the opposite of Sylvari. His nightly flight around the world casts darkness over the land, providing the night that signals sleep for many of the world. However, for demons and monsters, works like the dawn of their day. His scales are made of what seem to be hard dark, which is very similar to hard light in the fact that it is normally a synthetic material made by alchemists. However, his scales greatly lengthen and deepen all shadows and darkness in the world. Standing side by side, Sylvari and Darvanis create a low, dim light. Yet at a distance, they form the night and day Elincier knows so well. He isn't all bad, however, and rather is just a more dark and threatening presence that has some relations and controls judgment magic commonly used for evil. In truth, he is more of the yin in yin and yang. He is the allowance for evil things, but at the end of all things is a solemn force that follows all, and judges them all, as he is quite literally death in the universe. The soul is a thing that exists for certain in M., as we will discuss when we discuss the magic types of M. in these lore videos, and when the time comes for all, he converses with the souls to determine whether the demons or the angels, or even the Wyvera, take their soul. In each of the situations, this passage moves them towards true finality, whether they are consumed, transformed, or reborn into a new form from there, with all of it being a great mystery to the people of M. Darvanis, like Sylvari, is your very typical European dragon in shape, with his face adorned with 7 horns that point forward, much like goats, with only the 7th top horn pointed back. His face is permanently shaped in a dark, evil grin which leaks darkness, with brilliantly red eyes, piercing and threatening. His visage is one of nightmares, and he has been known to be easily capable of killing the weak-minded just with his presence alone. His time he spent with Sylvari during the mating of the dragons taught both of them to be more passive, not interfering with the world based on the natural parts of their instincts, rather acting only for the good of Valencia instead. However, before that, he spent most of his time claiming the souls of the dying, retrieving them for safekeeping, food, and even for helping with Sylvari's work. It was this gathering that first taught Sylvari of death, and after the Grand Exodus, how evil humans could interact with demons and monsters. This was never an intentional part of his natural allowance, but, as always, the water of the well will mix with whatever's at the bottom. After the mating of the dragons, he oversaw and taught the younger five of their strength, to understand their limits and show them the great power each of them had, helping them reach their godly power, yet cautioning them of their strength the whole while. His guidance was one that would teach each of them not only how to fight, but furthermore, protect the sanctity of all of Valencia. And humans, with the knowledge they learnt, made a dark tome of all the evil rituals and spells they had gathered. When this happened, Darvanas cunningly killed the group working on the evil book, claimed it, and gave it its namesake, Darvan's Eye, to be kept only to be used by a responsible dark mage who could, in the future, lead the Way of Black. His discussions with Garthog Thog felt like distant memories prior to the Great Exodus, like something was calling from the past, like the satisfaction he felt when he awoke for the first time was from something beyond them both, yet involved with them somehow. As time progressed, he would sit in on a multitude of Grand Councils, even being a part of the Grand Council which started the Dark Moon War, in which the descendant of Garthog Thog, Thogar III, spoke of the evils he saw within him, and how he and his group sought to end it with help of the Colored Ways. He sensed the man's dark past that happened before his memories were wiped by the betrayal of his brother, Garthog II. He worked to battle the chain bases in Alabaster, much like Sylvari and the other dragons, and aided with the reconstruction after the end of the war, helping a multitude of countries deal with their losses. He spoke with the Creator about the aftermath of the war, and of expanding the universe, suggesting to keep it tightly and densely packed, so all could view the fallen creations and creatures that come from these new additions. I skipped over his discussion of the Wyvera associated with Darvanas, of which are known as the Wyvera of Darkness. Some of them are corrupt, birthing creatures and demons alike, while those who remain loyal collect the souls of the dead and work to provide solace and guardianship over those who needed it most. The Wyvera of Dark, however, all feel cold and act in darkness, with only the dim light of Sylvari's roost at night being the reason a lucky few have ever seen them. Those who weren't dying to the corrupted Wyvera of Darkness, that is. Darvanas is a character that's been shrouded in a lot of mystery, but personally is one of my favorites of the Dragons. He's a character normally misunderstood, as most often people see the dark things capable with its judgment magic that forms the true evils, without the added knowledge that he doesn't harm or attack without reason. His common association with dark ambitions and lofty goals is honored and memorialized in the Darvana sigil. He is by far a very dangerous creature, but is high manifest of control and determination, only enacting as a judge of those who have died, and a guide to the world beyond. He acts the way most portray death, basically the final friend to walk that walk and discuss what comes from it. His differences with Sylvari drove them apart, but their respect for each other is still very prevalent, even now. He is definitely a multi-galactic being, but is a softie to those who deserve it, being a firm father of death Valencia has always needed, and will always have under his guide. Nulbrig. Nulbrig strides through the immense geostructures of the caves below his island, gems of grand rarity growing in such abundance, gold and diamonds glistening through it all, and a gem lizard, one of his own Wyvera, scamper away into hiding from the immense power. He sits, proud of his work, proud of his design, and well prepared for his well-deserved rest. He curls up in his roost for a nap, his surreal design echoing throughout the world in a premonition of tomorrow. Nulbrig is the dragon of design, the metal dragon, the resplendent, and the armored dragon. He is well revered even by his siblings and parents, and is the last of the 5 born from the mating of the dragons. He is a designer, first and forthright, echoing the creator's capabilities, but instead of through creation magic, through judgment magic, defining the world structures and laws of design, and ruling over it with rock-solid diction. His scales are made of chronoton, another normally alchemically made material, made by time enhancing the already unbelievably rare metal amalgam that is mithril, with the alloy being made of equal parts orichalcum and adamantine, with 2 parts of an iron-gold alloy film, which greatly enhances the magical components of the adamantine and the orichalcum. As it ages, mithril gets stronger in Emdod, hence why it becomes known as chronoton. Thus, you can see why he gets the name of the Armored Dragons, with scales constantly getting tougher and tougher as time ticks onwards. He is intrinsically a good character, due to the fact that order commonly leans towards that, and his design and thoughtfulness has led him to realize the better a scenario can turn out for the many, the better the world is for it. He was a designer that oversaw one of the great design philosophies behind the chains at the 8 chain bases, which once held the moon, if they were treated properly and managed with utmost care. As the tied 3rd largest creature in Emdod, he is a relatively bulky creature who has a large amount of height to him, with an aura of sheer power, prowess, and relatively taxing to be around for the weak-minded. Below that aura, however, he has a very gem-cut face, with 5 horns at the corners of the pentagonal plates that define his face, with eyes a brilliant rainbow amongst the silvery blue of his chronoton scales. He is an inspiration to all who are designers, tacticians, and scholars, and has been known to be a great conversationalist over a game of chess. And he has never lost a single game in all of history. He, however, is not a very storied character in comparison to his siblings, but has played key roles in history of which his siblings are known for. This is because amongst the dragons, he is the leader, and commonly the one who commands the dragons to improve and be of devastating effect on or off the battlefield. He has attended every council of the Colored Ways, overseeing coronations of the Colored Knights, and even oversaw all the preparations for the Great Exodus. He told Garthog of a place where a good kingdom could be formed in Antaros, and as thanks, Garthog crafted the Nulbrig scales, an armor set made of full chronoton with high godlike abilities, to be used if a Way of Grey was ever needed. Nulbrig also oversaw the creation of the Flare Illness by his brother Sembrion, gave guidance to Gul'shanen and Solvari as to good design philosophies for creatures of the world, and instilled the seeds of minerals and gemstones throughout the world, so that they may be harvestable by those in need of them for their grand designs. His island is said to have the most brilliantly wide array of minerals, rare or not, and that in a single day, a miner on Nulbrig's Roost would be so unbelievably rich that they would be unmatched even against a well-versed, well-accredited, and well-resourced alchemist after completing a magnum opus of creations. Beyond this, one of his major cases of showcasing his leadership was during the Darkmoon War, where as soon as he had heard of the offensive going on at the Col South Chain Base, which is where the final major battle of the Darkmoon War occurred, other than where Alabaster had been revived at, and Thoggar III and his group of companions rushed off to fight the threat at the center of the Draken Isles, Nulbrig single-handedly demolished legions of demons himself in the war, while commanding the other dragon strategies. His greatest strength is his mental capacity, which is the reason for him being known as the Dragon of Design. His Wyvera are all some form of gem-based or metal-based creature, like the gem lizard mentioned earlier, which commonly show good fortune, wealth, or important materials for those in need. Many monarchs like to keep a tamed one around to use it as a pseudo-advisor, due to their relation to Nolbreek, giving these creatures a form of sentience toward plans and ambitions, and a willingness to learn. This is especially so during wartime, and tactical measures made by countries use some of the white Vir as a metal to preface their plan as victorious under the good fortune of the beast. This emphasis on the tactical prowess of Nolbreek is also shown in the Nolbriga sigil, which helps teach soldiers how to fight and be well versed with their equipment. Nolbreek himself is a very reserved character, and therefore one that may not be seen in many stories. However, it is important that one understands his position in the Seven Dragons as a thinker, innovator, and tactician, with a lot of mental prowess which makes him stand out from his peers, and a love of the shiny and pretty things alike. Conrheim. Conrheim swims in the ocean around his isle, flowing smoothly, hungering for some food. In a moment, he strikes a leviathan, snatching it up from the depths to feast. He'll eat good tonight, with such a creature being his meal. He looks to the skies above, remembering his life, and preparing for the next wave the world will throw at him. Conrheim is the dragon of water, the dragon of winter, and the dragon over all liquids. He is the first of the dragons of matter we will discuss, but is the second born of the mating of the dragons, and is by far one of the most storied of all the dragon gods. Conrheim is known mostly for his work of creating the moon of which the Darkmoon War was fought over, having been the being who froze the Grand Demon of Wrath Solgar in an ice prison, permanently locking away the creature within the moon. His scales are made of constantly phase-shifting form of ice and water, of which hasn't been able to be replicated. His face isn't adorned with any horns, but rather two large gills which protrude from the sides of his face. He still has wings like his brothers and sisters, however, is a more fish-like dragon in style than any of the others. His involvement with the Way of Blue and the tales of the Blue Knights has made him a very well-known character, and arguably a favorite among those who know some of his stories, both in real life and in Alencia. And, like all of his siblings, is known for his good intentions, and, specifically for Conrheim, how much alike he is to the water of the world. Conrheim can be cold, straight-to-the-point character that's sharp as ice can be, however, is intrinsically a creature that finds himself filling in wherever he can, and reflecting on his life and the stories the world has told since its inception. Conrheim is excited by the stories of the old and the relics of the deep, and has been known to be a fierce tempest to those who have angered or affected those important to him, in cases such as Solgar did, or even as the demons did during the Darkmoon War. His major story is one shared amongst the Way of Blue, which, at the time people will be playing, is led by Tenel, the grandson of the character Liam, who used Conrheim's Claw, the lance that the Knights of the Way of Blue wield, to slay Solgar and freeze him during the Entourage Rebellion, in which the younger brother of the king at the time, King Raren, wanted to give rise to a powerful grand demon so as to rule with an iron fist over the kingdom with a legion of demons at his side. Gilbert, the brother of the king by the way, did not survive for too long after the rising of Solgar from the banishing arch that the priest of old had trapped him in, and he died in his battle versus a group of mercenaries, including Thogar Thog, or Thogar the First, as he broke the seal and released Solgar. As Solgar gained power and a flood of demons filled the cult's cave, the group battled their way up to the altar they were using to sacrifice King Raren to him, and froze him with the claw, before tossing it and Solgar along with it into a hole in the cave roof up to Conrheim, who snatched the demon and lance, carried it into the skies above, and froze it into orbit above Alencia. Liam was heralded as a hero, and since his passing, has gone down in history as one of the best the Way of Blue has ever had. Other major stories of Conrheim involve the myths of how he shaped the rivers, springs, and lakes of the world, cutting them open with frozen winds, then filling the gashes with water afterwards. Now, he occasionally meets with the creator when asked about aquatic life and aquatic areas, to which the dragon always responds with the best ideas and surreal dreamlike deaths that the oceans commonly conceal. His Wyvera are that of leviathans, great sea beasts, and even creatures on the smaller size, such as some small river Wyvera, which feast on tadpoles and minnows. His Wyvera are sought after by the likes of fishermen, as those who have caught them are commonly given great rewards due to the dragon materials obtainable through them. However, they are extremely rare, and only a few catches of Conrine's Wyvera have ever been recorded. Not all of his Wyvera are strictly aquatic, however, and some of them are much more amphibious, such as the dragon frogs relegated to swamps near coastal regions, which are relatively massive with their Draken origin. Conrine is surprisingly small though in terms of size, being only the 6th largest of all the creatures of Emdod, which is small in comparison to the rest of the dragon gods. But where he lacks in height and stature, he makes up for in character, providing a sort of helping and firm guiding hand to many across the history of Valencia, especially his treasured way of blue. His thoughtfulness and common views of being a well-respectable, well-knowledged dragon is viewed within the Conrine sigil players can get within the game. Sembrion. Sembrion dives through the lava of Valencia's greatest volcano, his Rus, enjoying the warmth and chaotic nature of the lava royals. It's a bath only the fieriest of creatures can survive, something only he and his Wyvera could call home. And Sembrion is nothing but prideful, hot-headed, and quick to realize his superior aspects. He just happens to ignore the aspects he isn't superior in. Sembrion is the dragon of fire, the dragon of summer, and the dragon over all plasma. He is the 4th born of the dragons, and one whose stories are commonly destructive, like fire and storms naturally are. Sembrion's title as Dragon over Plasma makes him a dragon of extremes, extreme temperatures, extreme speeds, and extreme destructive capabilities, much like lightning bolts can easily destroy forest trees, or fires can burn down houses, while said fire in a proper fireplace can be safe, a necessity for life, and a tool used for humanity's progress. Sembrion's major stories circle around the previously mentioned flare illness, the Way of Red, and just his general chaos and energy. His scales are made of straight fire. He is literally on fire all of the time, with horns of pure lightning, and emanates a relatively large aura of heat surrounding him due to being a being made of pure fire. He's commonly stated to be able to easily boil water in seconds to instantly. However, a scientific proof of this has never been showcased, and people could compare his fire to the ancient magic from the Source, aka Zeregios, or roughly 10,000 Ifrits. But that power and heat is something that is most definitely a theory rather than truth. Sembrion is a fiery dragon, with a lot of sass and a quick wit to him, but is known to be a relatively passionate and gentle soul alongside this, with a warmth much like a fireplace in the cold of winter. His involvement with the Way of Red, specifically around the Dark Moon War and the instigation of the Flare virus, has showcased his power as the Fire Dragon, and has made him relatively favored among the Dragon Gods in terms of the fans of the game and Alencia's inhabitants. Early in Alencia's history, 970 BCE to be precise, a group of cultists and elitists started claiming the dragons to be false gods, specifically Sembrion, claiming him to just be a Wyvera, or worse, not even real, and slandering the name of the Dragon of Fire. As such, upon learning of this slander and their intent the group had of killing the Way of Red because of their thoughts of him, Sembrion devised a devious illness with the help of Nulreek. It was a quick burning illness that would spread only across those who didn't believe in his power, in his existence as the Red Dragon, and those specifically who wished to harm him or the Way of Red. This virus is the only real moment in history where an attack on the dragons was a major threat, rather than an attack on a portion of the world, and as such stands as the only real moment in history where the dragons have really been angered because someone was trying to hurt something close to them. The cultists died out, their lungs burning them from the inside out, and the illness only spreading to a small sect of a few towns and villages before it died out itself, keeping all the true believers safe. Continuing from that, the Way of Red have always been a driving force behind Sembrion's strength, especially some of his more recent knights, such as Blaine, the prior Red Knight who fought in the Darkmoon War, and with Sembrion's tongue, the Sword of the Way of Red, burnt his way into the hearts of some of the operations of the chain bases, especially the Cold South chain base, where the final battle occurred. His power is resembled in his daughter, Orisa, who he passed the mantle down to once his age finally caught up to him. And she is very much just as spunky and fiery as the dragon she fights for, with considerably some of the best sword skills in the world, as of most players' current time of play. Sembrion's Wyvera of Fire are commonly known for being little fire beasts, resembling Sembrion or the more well-expected Wyvern, from which the word Wyvera gets its etymology, and extends as far as creatures such as the Royal Sembrionin, a greater version of the more common fish on the coasts of nations nearby the Draken Isles, known as the Deep Sembrionin. The fiery Wyvera normally appear to those who have sudden ideas, either being assigned to go along with the idea, or having been the one to possibly cause said idea in the first place. Regardless, the fiery nature of them in Sembrion, and the spontaneity they embody, is seen within the Sembria sigil. Overall, Sembrion is a strong character that loves to make his presence known, be it through his wacky, crazy deeds, or through his insane antics he pulls in more modern day, with a crafty way of finding just how to make his problems all burn away. As the fifth largest creature in all of Endod, he doesn't quite stand as tall as Nulbreek and Gul'shanen, but his fiery attitude always makes him a center of attention, and he has the firepower to back it up. Jiri. Jiri flies high above the clouds, admiring the mists of the low ground, the clouds on high, and the fresh air she flies so easily through. Valencia's skies have always felt like Jiri's home, her true home, sometimes even more so than the island she calls home. Lost in thought, she doesn't realize the bird coming her way, that rams in the side of her nigh invisible scales. She catches the bird and brings it to her roost, to rest and repair itself, so that she won't have messed up its flight too much. Jiri is the dragon of air, the dragon of fall, and the dragon over all gas. She's the third born of the dragons, and is considered by most to be the runt of the litter, due to her being the smallest of all the dragons. She emanates a windy aura which gives her all the space she needs, and has slightly amber-tinted, translucent scales and 9 horns, 4 on either side and 1 on top of her head. However, her small, ditzy, clumsy nature isn't a weakness, but instead her strength. She's a free-flowing fiend of aerial combat with some of the most dizzying and toxic blows of the dragons. This, combined with her naturally near-translucent scales, makes her surprisingly deadly with what she has available to her. She also is easily able to create vacuums, toxic clouds, and change the winds as if they were nothing. She tends not to pay a lot of attention to many of the events of the world, much like she tends not to pay attention to her surroundings, but what she commonly does wrong in, she tries to fix as best as possible. Her island is one that is entirely covered in fogs and mists, and some believe to actually be a floating island, a very rare kind in the realm of Valencia. If so, it makes sense why only few have ever claimed to have actually seen it, because it isn't where most would expect it to be. Jiri's major stories are focused on the Way of Yellow and her involvement in the Darkmoon War, as she hasn't had many transgressions against her or her way. During the Darkmoon War, she worked as a sort of stealth operative that cleared through lines of demons without notice, and battled as best as she could given the cold, frigid air of Colsouth. Zeren, the Knight of Yellow at the time, and still current Knight, wielded Jiri's spike as a deadly dagger against the many, with stealth and toxins unparalleled by any other. Their portion of the battle was one of cleaning routes and preparing strikes for the other ways, and the dragons, and especially took on the final subset of demons before Thogar III and his group of fighters went on to battle Garthog II. The older nature of Zeren has led him to training his offspring in how to serve Jiri, but that is still an ongoing task for the older, wiser, calmer attitude gentleman he is. Her Wyvera, the Wyvera of Air, are all over the spectrum of creatures from insectoids, greater bird-like creatures, and some high-altitude-loving beings like some Draken goats or wind wisps, and are commonly free-flowing, open-minded creatures who are rarely bothered by interaction with humanity or other creatures. And the dead ones of these are where most of the Draken materials humanity uses comes from. However, because most of them are of small size, there isn't any real risk of them going extinct or being overhunted. And this hunting of a few Wyvera actually helps keep the population in check. Overall, Jiri is a character who has had a lot of unique interactions within her stories and has a lot of room for prospective game masters of MDOT to work with. She's a character with a lot of personality and a lot of spice, and a unique combat style, but has very few historical recordings involving her other than her birth in the Darkmoon War. Her personality and free-flowing nature is resembled in the Jira Sigil, of which is heavily valued for its usefulness in training spontaneity. Gul'shanen. Gul'shanen slumbers peacefully on her island, the forest on her back growing perfectly in camouflage with the rest of the land. A monkey swings through the trees on her back, birds roosting in the trees along her spines, and she gently burrows a little bit more into the earth. She stirs and looks at her island happily. She's hungry, and the dragon wants her vegetables. So she strolls to the old gardens built from humanity's past presence here. A greater dragon fruit plant grows along the isle's shore, a plant she's tended herself, and she graciously eats away at the house-sized fruit. 3 of them, to be precise. Gul'shanen is the dragon of earth, the dragon of spring, and the dragon over all solids. She's the last of the dragons we will talk about, as this script is 17 pages right now, and is actually the firstborn of the dragons. As the eldest sister, she is surprisingly very loving, serene, and elegant with her actions. Her scales are a brilliantly emerald green, like the grass of the plains or the gentlest moss, with eyes like the sunset over a flowering valley. She's tied 3rd for the largest creature, as stated earlier, alongside her brother Nolbrig. She has 4 horns, one at each of the corners of her faceplate. However, despite all of this beauty she has, she spends most of her time with dirt all over her scales, actively carrying a forest on her back, with trees that are unbelievably healthy because of it. She mainly acts as a healer, but when she does need to fight, she can instantly shape earth and grow vines to entrap and encase her foes. Most of her stories actually come from the beginning of the history of Emdod, as seen in the story prior, and with how she isn't a fighter in the Darkmoon War, but a great healer for all of the colored ways, and as seen during Solvari's section, helped create a ton of life. At the beginning of history, she helped nurture humanity and taught them farming, how to care for the world, and how to care for each other as well, with some of humanity, especially the Way of Green now, learning to call her Mother Gul'shanen, treating her as a highly important figure even amongst the dragons, and in return, nurture the gardens of the island so that all the unbelievably rare growths spawned by Gul'shanen's presence, such as the greater dragon fruits and greater redwoods. Yes, trees that are known for being gargantuan naturally have an even more gargantuan form that grows exclusively on Gul'shanen's island. And there are only about 10 of them, which she still tends and cares for to this day. During the Darkmoon War, she would tend for the wounded from the demonic forces fighting, having a lot of her offensive power being used by the Way of Green's current knight, Zerali, of which, and excuse Wolf Doge thinking this lore applies to Depths of the Blighted Heart, it does in terms of rulings, but not actually what's happening in the campaign, is a warden under Gul'shanen, and because of her status, perhaps the strongest in the world at the time of most players' play period. Wardens draw their power normally from either a Wyvera of the Earth, demon or angel with earthen inclination, or, in very rare cases, the plants themselves. And, as Gul'shanen is effectively immensely stronger than any Wyvera on Earth, Zerali herself, with the Way of Green's weapon, Gul'shanen's tail, is essentially a powerhouse amongst wardens and considered a one-man army. Her followers from the Way of Green uphold her with high regard, and, with their leader's assistance, blasted holes in the enemy's defenses during the Darkmoon War. Many of the other knights fear Zerali's strength even now, despite her current age, so searching for someone to match or carry her strength before she settles down on making an heir for the Way of Green's knighthood. Overall, Gul'shanen's strength are categorized by her abilities and ways of providing to the world, and how she played a pivotal role in the growth of Valencia. This growth and loving nature is exemplified by the Gul'sha Sigil, which helps those sprout and improve all their weakest points. Gul'shanen proves to be a righteous force of nature, and the kind, loving spirit many wish for during the cold months of winter. Her serenity and provision she gave to the world inspire many an artist, many a worker, and mayhaps many a story writer, such as yourself. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and like to see more, down in the description is not only going to be a playlist for the series, but a playlist for the music once it's out, and a playlist for the campaign I'm running on this channel, Depths of the Blighted Heart. If you'd like to help out or just contribute to the ideas of MDOD, fan art is always welcome and appreciated in the Discord server, also seen below. Leave a comment for any lore you'd like to see covered in the future, or if you're confused about something. I always try to respond to all the comments on every video, so if you would like to know more, ask me there or in my Discord. Have a good one. Bye-bye!